pray with you. And I continued to look at them and tell that woman how beautiful she was, and tell him, tell them that they were loved. Sometimes that's what people need to hear when they've gone through a rocky road, a difficult time. They just need to hear that they're special, that someone sees them, that they're not invisible because they're homeless, because they're not, that they still have a voice. And so we prayed with them, and as we were standing out there praying, I'm telling you, I could feel the presence and the love of God in that space with us. And it was almost like while we were there holding hands, and yes, I held their hands. Why wouldn't I? We were holding hands, and I felt like it was almost like God's great big arms were wrapped around us as we were there in that space, in that moment of time. And so I began to, I could feel the tears welling up, and when I looked, the tears were just flowing from her eyes, and they were just so grateful. But you know who was grateful? I was grateful. I almost was about to say I felt like I was more grateful than they were. And I was glad too, because my daughter was able to see that it's important that empathy lives in us and lives and works through us. It's not just on the inside, that it's not expressed to those who are hurting, to those that are bleeding. And that's not a physical bleeding sometimes. It's a emotional bleeding from the pain of feeling rejected and forgotten for so long, for too long. We don't know how anyone gets there, how any one of us gets there. I was speaking to a couple of women, and I said, we need to do something to shed some light on this situation of homelessness, because I get it. Sometimes people just don't get it. But it's real. And so I just believe that, I'm excited when I get to see that these homes are being built for homeless people. I'm so glad for these human beings. And that's it. Sometimes people can be identified by their situation more than by their name. And I won't give their name, but this husband and wife that just needed a place to stay. Yes, they, were going back to the shelter. And even in that situation, we have to pray, because sometimes people say it's difficult in the shelter, right? They say that they don't always feel safe in the shelter. And I wish it was that everyone who was in the shelter would look and say, we're in this together for a period of time. This is temporary. It's not going to happen always. It's just for a period of time until we can figure out how to do better. And I wish that it was that, people could kind of pool either their resources together, even if they didn't have the resources, but pool their, support. Their support for one another. It doesn't always have to be monetary. Once again, sometimes it's just looking and acknowledging, I see you. You are a human being. Your situation does not dictate who you are. I think about the fact, I know where, a lot of people are about to celebrate Christmas, and, when we think about the fact that Jesus was born in a manger, right? There was no room for him at the inn. And yet, he was and is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And so I know for a fact that just because people are struggling, it does not mean that they are not special to God. It does not mean that they are not royalty. And I know someone could be saying, well, how can they be royalty? They're homeless. They don't have a place to stay. They can't. How can they be special? Why wouldn't they be special? Just because we don't have, does it negate the fact that we're still special? It means that sometimes people call it process. Just because a caterpillar was down crawling on the ground, one day that caterpillar starts to fly. And the people who poked at it and called it ugly and yucky, which is in my book, I love that chapter called The Butterfly Wings. Who knew that that caterpillar one day was going to rise up and take flight and display beautiful colors? Who knew that you or I, those of us that had gone through difficult situations, will one day rise up to display beautiful colors? It's temporary. As I looked at him, he said to me, he says, do you ever go to Barnes and Nobles? Do you ever go and, speak and do talks on your book? And I don't know, Barnes and Nobles down here, what did they tell me? They just do it with the popular books. So guess what? That's why I have a podcast called Don't Give Up. I have another show. Because you never let anything stop you. Sometimes people are not going to see your worth. People don't see that their worth, that men and that women. And what they said was too, some of the shelters, like the men go in one area, the women in another. And I said, well, do you always sleep in the shelter? They said, no, sometimes we don't because we don't want to be separated. That was like the most beautiful. It was beautiful. You just looking at them, beautiful people. Yes, we were different shades. I'm chocolate brown and they were more vanilla. But humanity is humanity, regardless of what color humanity is. We all breathe the same air. We all have blood. And if they needed a transfusion, or I, or whatever, or you, or whatever, it's all the same, regardless of what people think. And that's the thing too. Sometimes people would say, oh, it's just the African Americans. It's this group of people. No, they were Caucasian. And it didn't matter because in that shelter, I'm sure there were Caucasians and African Americans and Hispanics and old and young. And it's humankind. When people fall on hard times or they come on hard times, it happens. What do they say? It happens to the best of us. But what's the best of us? Who's the best of us? Uh-oh. As my phone just fell. But yeah. It's humankind. So during this what they say holiday season, once again, Jesus was born in a manger. It never took away from the fact that he still the king. And some people didn't know it yet. I'm sure there were some people who said, oh, did you hear about that lady that had that baby over there in the stable with the animals? Oof. He was still royalty, regardless of where he was born, regardless of where you live, regardless of who sees your worth and who doesn't. You are still precious to God. You are still special. And don't ever believe that you're not. And here's the other thing. Things are temporal. They do change. I think that in this complex, I look at how people have been treated. I look at how, we were even treated. Sometimes people really don't know who you are. And they may laugh at you in your present crisis. But I don't want you to let it bother you, not one bit. They just don't know who you are. Jesus prayed a great prayer. He said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And that's a good prayer to pray too, because when you're down, it just seems like things are magnified. Like things are just it seems so big when you're trying to find your way. And what would I tell you to do if you could? Go take a nap. Why'd I say that? Because sometimes we go through things and it's like we're trying to figure it out. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And your mind is running like a freight train. It's going so fast that you just need to stop and sit down and say, let me rest my mind. And I'm telling you, if you just take a moment to stop and to give it to God and go to sleep and wake up, 9 times out of 10, you're going to feel better, at least a little better. And maybe even a lot better. You've got to rest sometimes. And somebody might be saying, well, how can I rest? Do what you can in your situation. Those of you who can get help, like I said, some people don't have family. They don't have people who can help them with their situation. And, I want to say in reality, it would be easy for me to get on here and say, yeah, you don't have to go through anything. Well, I can't say that. I've had to go through things, many things. This whole situation has been a great challenge. But, you have to kind of find a way to not let it get to you too much. And what's the thing? Like, if there's someone, like when people laugh at you, just know that God always has, and I hate this, I know someone's like, what? But God does get the last laugh, and he sees, but that's not for you to be concerned about. You've got to keep going. Even if you are facing homelessness, even if you are homeless at the moment, and you're listening to my voice, keep going. Keep going. You are seen. You are heard. You are not forgotten. Life does get better. And the biggest thing about it that I've discovered is, even when it seems like it's so difficult, the fact that I knew and that I know that I am not alone, that you are not alone, that God sees. And yes, we live in this world where, because of sin, there are all kinds of things that are going in ways that they don't need to. But God is with us. He sees our tears. He hears our cry. And he's yet worthy of the glory. I like the movie, The Pursuit of Happiness. I enjoy that movie very much with Will Smith. I love it when I see someone who struggled finally come out on top, to the point that they're able to clap their hands and rejoice because they made it through that situation. And sometimes you'll make it through that situation and then something else will come. But know that with God, you can do all things. All things are possible with God. Even the hardest situation that you've ever faced, that you may be facing today, and I know it hurts like I don't know what. I've been there. I've been there. But you can make it through. Just try to give it to God. Try to relax your mind. Don't worry about the people's faces. You've got to know who you are deep down on the inside. And if you don't, I'm asking you, ask God. You have a Bible, open it up. Start looking for things that God says about you. Number one, he created you to love you. He created you to love you. And yes, I know there's an enemy who hates you, hates me. But God loves us. And if no one's told you that they love you, you've got to know that God does love you. So just in case someone leaves and your heart is broken, and maybe you are that single mom who was left to raise those children all by yourself, and you just like, I don't know, probably like you scratching your head, shaking your head, how am I going to make it? Keep looking for the answer. This is temporal. This is temporary, sis. It's temporary. And maybe you're that man who feels bad because you want to provide for your family and you lost your job and you feel really bad about it because you want to be that provider. Keep looking. Don't give up. I know that's my other podcast, but I could say this on here too. Keep on going. Keep on going. It will change. And if you're listening to my voice and